On today's episode number 19 of the Real Recovery Podcast, we welcome Tony Vezina from 4D Recovery. Tony shares his powerful story of overcoming addiction and his inspiring work in the recovery community. Tune in to hear about his journey, the impact of 4D recovery, and the importance of community support in the path to sobriety.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast. I'm Julie, your co-host. On this journey of healing and transformation, together with my co-host Peter, we dive into the heart of recovery, sharing stories that resonate with courage and inspiration.
That's right, Julie. Each episode is a new chapter in this vast narrative of recovery, and we're honored to bring them to you. But keep in mind the perspectives you'll hear are for informational purposes only and may not reflect the views of the podcast or our partners.
Indeed, while these conversations can be a powerful part of your recovery toolkit, they are not substitute for professional medical advice. We encourage you to seek guidance from your healthcare provider for any treatment-related decisions.
And if you're facing an immediate crisis, or if you just need to talk to someone who understands, don't hesitate to call the Recovery Crisis Line at 503-223-8569. That number is also on our website. Help is available 24/7.
Now let's begin our episode
Of recovery, real recovery.
Good, yeah.
We're going to welcome you. We're with Tony Vezina
Yep.
at 4D Recovery, and really grateful for your time. Really grateful to get the word out beyond. And your story is one of the most powerful ones, period, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm really proud of you. And I've been in recovery a long time. So we wanted to ask you to tell us your story and then to go into what you do now and how you got there.
Sure, yeah. No, I appreciate it. My name's Tony Vezina, and I've been in recovery coming up on 12 years. On July 20th will be 12 years, and then I'm a little tired right now.
My date's the 19th.
On the 19th, July 19th?
Yep.
Oh, great.
7. I'll get there.
Yeah, you'll get there, man. One day at a time, as they say. But yeah, it's just two of my kids have ear infections. And then my soon-to-be wife has strep throat. And anyway, so I was up all night, and then I was just frustrated with my son. He's coming up on 2. And he still finds his way into the bed every night. He just does not give up, right? And I was last night, I was geez, man. I was you're gonna just sleep with me, you're not sleeping with mom. And so, anyways, I was dude, you're not getting up in the bed, blah blah. And I was trying to be all stern. And then my soon-to-be wife, her name's Rachel, my fiance. He's sick, Tony. But I'm no. No, you guys are babying him too much and stuff. And then she just texted me an hour ago, and she's he has 2 ear infections. And I just felt horrible. I was oh man, I was so wrong. And so I owe him a big apology and a bunch of love later. My kids are the reason, or my first kid, was the reason that I got clean. It was my big motivation to get clean. And I always like to say that because I think I had heard a saying, that you can only get clean for yourself, and I just don't think that's true. I think whatever your motivation is great, and my motivation has changed over time. I've wanted it for myself. I've wanted great things in my own life. I've stayed clean out of spite of others. It's changed, but for me personally, there was a time in my life where I could not see my life without drugs. And now I cannot see myself using drugs, and it's more important now than ever that I don't use. Lost someone close a Saturday morning from fentanyl.
Oh, jeez.
And it's just such a sad story, the way that fentanyl and meth now, how these strong, powerful drugs, how they're just destroying people's lives. And in this instance, the father was found dead by his son, and I just think gotta stay clean. There's nothing I can't get through clean. It's important for me to do that for myself, of course, but for my kids, it's just so incredibly important that I be there for them and in a way that my family was not there for me. So my story starts in Pocatello, Idaho, in the trailer parks of Pocatello, Idaho, similar to Eminem, who's in recovery too.
You got that look. I'm just
I
saying.
know, I know. Yeah, I know. When I got this great honor about 5 years ago where I was one of 5 men highlighted by Gillette for the best men can be. And they were like redefining what men were and what it meant to be masculine and stuff. And they had this photo of me that they used on their Instagram where I look like Eminem. And then you don't want to read the comments because it was very illustrative of what people think about drug addicts. But they were saying stuff like, oh yeah, let's clap for this guy. He got his driver's license and stuff, in which I get. It's funny. It wasn't funny at the time.
Right.
To me, I was very upset and I was like arguing with people on social media and stuff. But those things may seem trivial at times, but they were important for me. I didn't get my driver's license until I was 27. But anyways, I started in Pocatello, Idaho, and moved to Vancouver, Washington at a very young age. My mom got pregnant when she was 15 by my dad, Ricky, and then she left town because she wanted to get away from him and the drugs and stuff that consumed my family. And so I grew up in Vancouver, Camas, Washington, with my stepfather and then also my half-sister. And I didn't realize that they were my stepfather and half-sister until I was about 13. And then I have found out that my cousins, a couple of my cousins, were also my brothers and sisters because my dad had a kid with my mom and then had 3 kids with my mom's sister. And when I was poor already, like we were poorish, and I was in Camas, Washington, and it was like more of a affluent town. And I already felt just like less than because of that. And then I really just felt indifferent and embarrassed of who I was. And for a lot of my life, I was embarrassed of who I am, or of who I was, and I was embarrassed to be myself. And I wouldn't say that's the reason that I used. I wouldn't say necessarily it was like the trauma that I went through that was the reason that I used. I know scientifically speaking, those things can play a factor. I just like to get high. I got high. And I like to get high. I like to party. And even though I didn't have a bunch of great experiences right out the gate, I get too high, puke, stuff like that, pass out, puke on girls at the party or whatever. When I was like 13, like I had these adverse experiences, right? But I liked the dopamine hit. And once I started to use, even at a young age, I took it to the nth degree. And I had to every time. And so I had played sports and stuff, and I was smart kid academically. I was smart, but I just like to get high. I didn't like my family situation. At a young age, I started running away from home a lot, skipping out of school, getting arrested, going in and out of jail. And I did that throughout high school. I did not graduate high school. And I remember sitting outside of the football stadium, outside of the fence at the entrance to the football stadium, and the high school graduation ceremony was happening where the stadium bleachers are. And I was sitting with my friend and we were like smoking a blunt, and I was thinking like they were losers. That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, these people are losers, like whatever, I'm here, I'm high, I'm about to go have a great time. And so that's how distorted my perception was and where my identity was. And then, like, I didn't graduate. I partied a lot, bounced around a lot. But my addiction really took the next stage, right? The next chapter when my mom, in about 2001, 2002, was prescribed like a ton of Oxycontins. My mom had like back problems and fibromyalgia, and she had went to this doctor who prescribed her like a ton of pills. And there was this pill farm, what I know now as a pill farm in Vancouver, Washington, where the doctor was just prescribing copious amounts of Xanax, Valium, and Oxycontins. And so I got my hands on 80 milligram oxys. And then I was working at like a landscape company, and I was like 18, 19, and I had all those pills. I was just like balling. I was just like selling them, using them and stuff. And at that time, I didn't really understand what like dependence was, which is interesting because I'm like, I remember thinking very poorly of this guy. I think his name was Coach Hartman. He was a wrestling coach who was in recovery at my high school. And I remember thinking like, oh, what a drug addict. Like, what a loser. He was in recovery, which is interesting. Like, I wasn't introduced to the idea of the disease of addiction until way later on when I got into recovery. But like, I didn't know at that time when I had all those oxys, like, that you could become physically dependent, blah, blah, blah. I remember I ran out of them. I had run out and I thought I had the flu. And then somebody told me like, no, you're like going through withdrawal from the oxys. And then I had decided that I was going to quit and I was going to go through the withdrawals. But then there was this girl that was coming to the party, right? And wanted to be dope sick when she was at the party. And so I used again. And we ended up having a kid together. That was Bella. That was the reason I got sober. But anyways, I remember thinking, this is bad. The fact that I'm like ill without this drug is really bad because you can't function. And so you have to get up, go through your day just to function. It was really bad. And so I just wrote it off. Whatever, this is bad. I'll quit sometime, whatever. I had access to all these pills. And then the pill farm got busted by like the feds or something. And it's all the supply dried up like overnight, right? And then that's when the heroin came in.
Oh, boy.
And then the way that me and a bunch of my friends were introduced into using heroin was by mixing it with water and using Afrin nasal spray bottles. And so you just snort it. And for us, it wasn't like this big jump, right, to injecting drugs. And we all started using heroin. I used heroin with my mom. My mom ended up getting like a smaller script from a different doctor, but it was nothing in comparison to what we had got originally. It was only like 180s a month, which is still a lot, but it was only like 100 of them. And anyways, my disease entered a new chapter, right? And then Sophia is her name. This girl I was like in love with. So like Filipino ballet princess girl. We got pregnant and I had been chasing her around all over the place, everywhere her parents took her to get away from me, including the University of Hawaii. Yeah, so her dad sent her, her dad sent her to Hawaii and I found my way over there. Chasing her down. I'm like,
That's true love. Wow. All the way
yeah,
to
they had
Hawaii.
my talons in her pretty deep. But anyways, I chased her around and stuff, and then we ended up finally getting pregnant. And we moved to Idaho, back to Idaho, which I had made a couple trips to Idaho a couple times to live with grandma and try to get my shit together. But anyways, we moved to Idaho, and I really tried to quit. Just using oxys, not the other drugs, of course. I always went back to it. Like I found methadone down there. There was no heroin, so like I found methadone and bought methadone off people who had a prescription and stuff. And then, eventually Sophia left because I didn't get my stuff together and she moved back down with her parents. And then I got arrested in Idaho. And then I told the police that I knew all of the cartel and everything, and if they just let me out of jail, I would weave together everything for them and I'd help them bust a big fish. And I knew some of the names of some people. And so they let me out. And then I told my grandma people were after me. I need to get out of town. So she gave me some money. And then I told this other dude, it was a meth guy. I told him I knew some meth cooks in Vancouver if he could just drive me down there. And then so
Wow.
I escaped Idaho with some pending felony charges. And then, of course, got down to Vancouver and then, hijacked the dude's car and just a bunch of stuff that I did in my addiction. And then ended up getting arrested in Portland for possession. And then I forgot to say that prior to leaving Idaho, my mom had died. My mom had died in a car crash. So she'd gone off at the wheel and then burned alive in a car crash. And then that was like the next chapter of my addiction. And that's when I started using intravenously and lost a lot of hope then. But anyways, like that happened. And then I was back down in Portland. And then I started trying to go to treatment and stuff then. And
Because the food at the Justice Center is absolutely the most disgusting food.
Oh, that's what it's like at first, but then you can't wait to eat 2 or 3 plates. So it ain't so good at first, but then you can't get enough of it. I'll tell you that.
I'm going to tell you, I lived on juice and chips and the roll, because they couldn't fuck up the roll and the apple and the milk. Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah, no. Did my little jail time, and it's interesting because I never stopped to think about what my life could be or what I wanted in my future. Like, I always had my eyes in the rearview mirror, and it always was like what I didn't have, what people had done to me, who had more than me, and I just was like in a lot of like pity, self-loathing, stuff like that. And then anyway, so I started going to treatment and at a jail in Portland. Got arrested in Washington one time. Eventually, I went to treatment a couple times, had some limited success, but eventually I had started living like on the streets like an animal, almost like the Narcotics Anonymous book. And I'm cool with whatever people do for their recovery, but there's some stuff in the NA book there's some stuff in the A book I really like too, but there's this quote in the NA book where it says that our life had been reduced to an animalistic level. And that really stuck out for me when I read that. Like, I just needed drugs and shelter. And like shelter was like a bush, like whatever. Like, I was homeless in Portland before it was like you could be homeless in Portland. Before it was like sanctioned. You could do it. Or it was like people were like posting on Instagram downtown and stuff, thinking it's cool. But like that was the level that I was at. And that's all I could do. All I could do was like get my next high. All right. And then I would have these like where I'd want to change. People call them like moments of clarity, whatever. But like I would want to change. And it was always like for my kid, my oldest kid, Bella. And so the last time that I went to treatment, I got there through the criminal justice system voluntarily before, but this last time I was through the criminal justice system, and I got released from jail about 10 days before my last arrest. I got released, and I had a new plan. And this time I was gonna just do meth, and I was gonna sell heroin, and that was my new plan. And so I went to this thrift store and like to steal some clothes to wear so I could go boost at a store. I put some decent clothes on, and like I was like in the dressing room like stealing some clothes, and I found like $40 in the pocket, and I was like, oh shit, like I must be on the right path. I was like, okay, this is a sign, this is a sign. I can get my little Cricket phone going for $1 or whatever. I don't know if people remember that. You could be able to buy $1 a day on your Cricket line. But anyway, so I like started selling, some heroin, working my way up and like using meth. And then I was at like a convenience store. I was just trying to make some fucking oatmeal in a cup. That's it. I don't know what offended the clerk so much they had to call the cops. But they did. And probably because I was acting great. I don't know if I paid for it or not. I was really high. But then the cops came and they arrested me. And I had some heroin. I hadn't even used it yet. I had been waiting to use it. And when they found the heroin and took it from me, I like was like screaming at them like, no, that's mine. You know what I mean? And in retrospect, it was like, that shit was so important to me. And so they locked me up. I tried that move that I told you about in Idaho. I tried it with the Portland police, and they were like, bro, we don't even care. They're like, we don't care who you know, how much you need to get help. They're like, we're taking you to jail, and you can sit in there till you go to treatment. And I was like, just let me out, blah, blah. And they're like, no. They're like, you need help, bro. And I was like, okay. So then I sat in jail for a while and started to get a little healthier and stuff. And then I was waiting to get early release to treatment. So I was in there like 30, 40 days. And then the day before my release date, I got called to leave. And I thought they were just releasing me and I wasn't going to treatment. I was like, shit, whatever. So I started thinking like, okay, what's my next run going to be like? What am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And they told me I was getting released to treatment. And the guard who takes you to treatment brings you outside. And I thought about running. As soon as I got outside, I thought about running. I didn't have anything. I had like holes in my shoes. My socks were like still like wet. my shirt was torn or whatever from interacting with the cops. But even in that moment, I thought about running. And I'm really glad that I didn't. Because then I got to the treatment center and I got inspired in that moment. And it wasn't even like this big inspirational moment. It was just like a twinkle. And that twinkle for me was like I was in the reception area, sitting on the couch, and right after reception area, there's the chow hall. And I was looking in the chow hall and I saw a bunch of guys in there as at VOA. And they just looked healthy. Like healthy and physically
VOA
strong.
and MLK?
Yeah, VOA MRC, Volunteers America, Men's Residential Center. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to get that. I'm just going to get there. I'm just going to get healthy. And I had looked at like the clothes I was wearing and stuff, and I was just like, you ain't got much going on right now. And so I just stayed in the MRC. And then while I was in the MRC, there's other like little moments where I got like some hope. And in the beginning, it was like the counselors there who were in recovery and who were like finishing up their master's degrees and then whatever, like my counselor, my one-on-one counselor, who his name was Gordy, and they called him 240 Gordy. And he had been to prison a lot, and he was a meth cook, and he reminded me a lot of my dad. And so he was able to talk to me in a way where I would listen. And then whatever, he like got me to like doing some work on myself. And then they focused heavily in this program on outside support, social support. And so you had to find these support people to take you to meetings and stuff. And so I have found a sponsor, my first sponsor there. And I had picked him because I heard his story. And I thought like he did way worse stuff than me. And so I was like, he's not going to be able to judge me because he's a big piece of shit. Like, that was like my thought at the time, right? I was like, he won't be able to judge me. And I started doing step work and looking at my own life. And one of the big things for me was just taking accountability for my actions, which I found through step work. And that, yeah, my life was rough, but that did not exempt my own behavior. And at some point in my life, I was an adult. And I had to take responsibility for my actions. If I did, good things would happen, right? Like if I did, good things would happen. And so I was like explaining to my counselor, I have figured it out, right? If I just do good things would happen. And he's like, you should tell other people. The other guys here, you ain't got to steal
the
no more.
word.
Yeah. And at that time, it was like, look, like I didn't know how not to steal and manipulate, right? Like I didn't know how not to steal going into a store. I was so used to stealing all the time that even if I had money, I would want to steal. And so I had to learn how not to steal. I remember my second sponsor, this other guy, because I had fired that dude after I did like my 4-step, but I got this other guy who had like more clean time and stuff. He's my sponsor for a long time, but his name's Greg. I remember he took me to the movies, right? And I was like, why is this guy want to take me to the movies? He want to sleep with me or something? I don't understand what's going on, right? Like I didn't get it. I didn't get the whole part about just like being nice and helping people,
Right.
Which I do now, right? Like I just try to help people and be nice. And then I got in his car and there was like money in the little dash or whatever. And I was like, oh, this motherfucker's trying to test me. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to set me up to see if I'll steal from him or something weird. You know what I mean? And I was like, I felt like flush and like I had a physiological experience because I didn't know how not to steal, right? But that just shows you like how distorted my reality was. So anyways, like I worked the steps and then I started going to school, and I was fortunate because the probation department in Multnomah County had this thing called the Launder Learning Center. And if you were on probation, you could go there and you could get your GED. And so when I was in treatment, they forced you to go on Tuesdays and Thursdays to get your GED, which I did not want to do. I wanted to go to Fresh Fruit, the NA meeting with the girls from the other VOA. You know what I mean? That's where I wanted to go. But the treatment centers...
Fresh fruit.
Yeah, dude.
I love it.
And so, but the treatment center, they seemed to think it would be a good idea for me to get my freaking GED, which I was not prioritizing that. I thought a relationship was going to be helpful and whatever makes you feel good. But anyway, so I got my GED, and then through that, I got 12 free credits to Portland Community College. And so getting my GED at 27 was like the first accomplishment in my entire life. And I remember I got it and I was riding the Max back to the treatment center and I cried because it was like the first thing I'd ever accomplished in my life. I felt like 27 years old with 4 teeth left and a food stamp card. I had finally got my GED, and then I had talked the treatment center into letting me go to college. while I was in treatment, which they didn't do. They didn't like doing that because people got their fast food checks and then disappeared after they got 3-4 grand. They said they had seen that move a few times, but I had talked them into it. And then the Wander Learning Center, they took us to Portland Community College to help us go through the whole admissions process. And then they had set us up with this one credit, I think it was like a CBT sort of class. It was like a scholarship you could take. That was a recovery support group in the college, and they paid for one of your credits. And it was in the Women's Resource Center. And I was like, I can hang out at the Women's Resource Center at the time.
I love your thought process.
I was like, this seems to be adding up here. But anyways, I was in the Women's Resource Center, and this woman, Diane Thornton, she had told me that I should start a club for people in recovery. So at PCC, you can charter your club. You have to write the charter and do stuff. And so I did. So I created this club, and I got my 12 members or whatever. And then so I started this recovery club in student government. And then the goal of the club was to destigmatize recovering people by doing service work in the community. And then they had this cool incentive program that your club could earn money by service hours that you do in the community. And so I earned a bunch of money. I forget how much it was, like $1,200 or something, the maximum through these service hours we did. And then we threw an event, this place called 4D Recovery. It was, at the time, I think it was called the 24/7 Sober Club or something. And it had just opened up, and it was this warehouse in the industrial area of Northeast Portland. And anyways, I had heard about it, and I went there a few times. You could play pool and stuff. It was just getting started. And so I threw this event for adolescents there, adolescent recovery event. Because I was like, I want to help the kids. And it was like a huge event. It was really awesome. We killed it. It was great. And then the board members at the time, they recruited me to be on the board. And I was like, sure, I'll join the board. And then I've been with 4D ever since. And so I got on the board. I met this dude, Eric Martin. And then Eric.
What a miracle.
Yeah. And then Eric, he's been one of my mentors for a long time. And he's in recovery. And he has ran MACBO, formerly ACBO, which is the accreditation body, the certification body for drug and alcohol counselors in Oregon.
I did 9 of the, I told you I'm trying to move somewhere different in my career. Selling bougie pajamas isn't really working for me
anymore. Yeah.
But I did 9 out of the 10 classes. I have one more. Yeah.
What, did you do them through Daystar or through PCC?
No, I went, Izzy.
Yeah.
Told me where to go. And I think because of my HR knowledge and stuff, I was able to test out of the ethics and a couple things like that. I watched your video. All I have left is the CRM.
Okay.
So, and I'm in class for that in a week. I'm excited.
Are you taking my class next week?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I'm trying so hard to make.
I know everything that's going on in my life. Don't
but
worry.
I'm just really trying to make good of my time. You know?
I feel you.
I don't usually have time off. The first 4 months of this podcast, I worked every day without a day off. Yeah. Because we only recorded on Fridays and Saturdays. So it's been, I love that.
Yeah, great. Anyway, so I got involved with 4D, and there was no money at the time. So people often say I'm the founder of 4D. I'm a co-founder. But very much everything that 4D has been a group effort for a lot of people. And I'll get into 4D a little bit later. I've been the driving force for a very long time.
I love that.
But I have my own mentors, support people. Things that I've accomplished in my life were very much a reflection of the people I have around me and the support I've been given. But I'm at PCC. We do this big event, kicks out. I get part of 4D. Then I'm like, shit, I'm pretty good at this organizing thing, right? And someone's like, you should run for student body president of Portland Community College. I was like, okay. So I didn't get it. But then they're like, what you should do is you should be the president of the Honor Society, which is interesting given the fact that I was calling all the people who graduated losers at one time in my life, right? And so things are changing,
Full
right?
circle.
Yeah, things are beginning to change, right? And so now I'm the president of the Honor Society, right? And so I'm in class and stuff, and people think I'm a fucking square. And they don't know. And people don't even know that I'm president of the Honor Society and I have that outstanding warrant in Idaho still. right?
Oh,
Because I have an outstanding felony warrant in Idaho. It's non-extraditable. They won't extradite me, but I have this felony, and so then I'm doing all this stuff in the honor society. You have to do all these like projects and stuff like that. It's actually a lot. It's a lot of work that you do, but it really helps you develop a lot of skills. And then so I do that and I kill it. And I'm still like at 4D on the board. We're building the organization. And then when I run for student body president again, and I get it this next time, and then Portland Community College has 4 different campuses, and each campus has its own individual government. And so I was student body president of the Cascade campus, and then I got to be the chair of like all of the different student governments. So I got to be like the president of the whole school, which is really like,
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah, it was cool.
What
I got
an
to
education in itself.
Oh, it is. Yeah. You do a bunch of stuff when you're a part of Portland Community College's student government. They have these really robust and rigorous leadership development curriculums that they've created. The school has, and everybody goes through them. Participation is voluntary to some degree, but you can like I earned money selling T-shirts at the African American Films Festival, and then did some other work, and I earned my way to go on these like service leadership experiences or initiatives. I forget what projects, service leadership projects. I did a couple years in a row. The second year, I got to pick the focal point of the advocacy. A lot of it's like a tour around America, and then you'll end up like in Washington, D.C. advocating for a certain thing. And so I got everybody to agree to do criminal justice reform around substance use disorder, and I had that felony warrant. And so I was like, I'll go down, like, change some shit. And so, like, I was in Washington, D.C., like, lobbying. I'm like, you guys stop locking people up. People change. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I swear to God, they do. You don't want, after they get in recovery, you don't want to put them in jail no more, you know? And, like, the whole time I'm there, you know, I'm, like, several years clean, and I'm just, like, waiting for them to grab me. And if nobody's ever been to Washington, D.C., where Congress is, it's, like, massive. It's like a city. It's like amazing, and the architecture is amazing. You know, you go down, there's just these massive, the Senate building's massive, the Library of Congress is massive, like everything's just massive. It's this huge Victorian city, and it's just great. And I just got back from there a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, so I'm like doing that, you know, and I'm like at 4D, and then like Eric talks me into being the first paid like executive director of it. And so I agree. I didn't want to do it while I was student body president because I was like really committed to that. And I had committed to representing all the students. And so I didn't make it like all about, I made it about like, how could I make this institution better? So there's a variety of initiatives people cared about that I supported. But the one thing that I had changed while I was there was I got us to add that chair position, the president of the school, to be on the board of directors as an ex officio voting member, which was really big because then they got to participate in all the work sessions and stuff, and I got a lot of accolades from that and stuff, and I worked really hard while I was there. And then I left that, and then I went to Concordia for my bachelor's degree, and I just stopped caring about school. Like I did school, but I really stopped caring, and I just focused on 4D. And I was like, oh, I was able to change all this stuff at PCC, and everybody told me I wouldn't, and I did it in 9 months. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm just gonna do the same thing in the state of Oregon. I was like, I'll just change everything really quickly. And then it does not happen that quick when you're dealing with politics and policy at a state level. But anyway, so I just started, you know, working on 4D, and then I've been growing 4D ever since and participating in like advocacy and stuff like that. So, you know, that like I really focused a lot on giving back to the community. So one of the things that I have figured out then early in recovery then was that like I knew I was really insecure about who I was. Like I had identified that, but I have found that I could get over a lot of that insecurity if I had some sort of goal to do something, to benefit society or to give back. If that's what I was doing, then that alleviated a lot of my fear about not being able to do it because it wasn't about me no more. And in the very beginning of my recovery, I worked the steps and stuff like that, and had a spiritual awakening, and then tried to give back to people in recovery and then just the general community.
That's how you keep it, by giving it away.
That's what they say, yeah. And so that's what I did. And then it wasn't until about 5 years in, and the reason I got clean was for my daughter, Bella. But it wasn't about till 5 years in that I was able to totally get in her life in a real way because her grandparents would not let me around. And it took 5 years. So if you're out there, and it's like you're not
Stay-
getting everything you want right away, like, and sometimes it takes work. Like, it's not everybody's experience. That's what it took for me. Like, I got to see her and stuff, but it was very much secretive. And then she being autistic and developmentally delayed. And so as soon as I was able to be a father in a real way, and for me, that was marked by her grandparents accepting me. That was like a really big thing in my life, to have them accept me, because they were very critical of me for good reason. I was not the best choice. I was dangerous. I did drugs, crime, was not a good, suitable partner for their daughter, right? Like, I don't blame the dad. I would not want me dating my daughter now. But the first thing that I did was drove her to Wichita, Kansas, and dropped her off at a school for kids with autism. So there's not a lot of residential programs for kids who have high acuity and multiple issues. And so there's only 4 or 5 in the nation that could accept my daughter. And just kudos to her mom for fighting so hard with the school district, because they flipped the bill. They have to. But anyway, so that was like the first thing I did as a dad, was like give her to somebody else, which was really difficult for me. I felt really good about doing it, but also giving your kid away and somebody else's care because you can't care for them, it hurts. It hurts as a parent, and it still hurts today. She's in a different school. She's doing well, like great, but like I don't have the means to take care of her, and sometimes it just really hurts me as a parent. But I did that about 5 years in. And then I finished up my bachelor's degree and graduated summa cum laude or whatever, which was cool. And then had co-founded an advocacy organization called Oregon Recovers, which started in 4D's office. There's a lot of stuff that started in 4D's office, but started in 4D's office with Mike Marshall, a guy named Mike Marshall, and he's in recovery and had a background in political organizing. And so we put together a rally for recovery down at, I think, Shemensky Park in downtown Portland, and seeing what was going to happen. And basically our goal was to increase the visibility of the problem. High addiction rates in Oregon, low access to treatment. We wanted to change that. And so we had a rally, and like 1,000 people showed up. We had legislators and all
when
this
was
stuff.
this?
This is in 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so at that time, there wasn't a lot of money for recovery services, peer services, outside of Medicaid reimbursement, outside of treatment. And that changed during COVID. But anyway, so it like started Oregon Recovers, got involved in advocacy and organizing, and really credit Mike for what I learned from him. We don't always see eye to eye on strategy anymore, but I learned a lot from working with him very quickly about how the political machine works. I'm very grateful for that and honor him for all his expertise. Doing that, I spent a lot of time doing that, organizing, trying to increase resources, and then building 4D as well. And 4D at that time just had one recovery center, and that's what our vision was, like, have these recovery centers. And then I'll explain more about what 4D it does at the end, but I'm building 4D, building my organizing and political skill set. And then at that time, around that time, 4D was serving adolescents and young adults 13 to 35, and that was a problem because mixing kids with adults was just a really big issue.
Right.
And the biggest problem was like young women and older men, whether that was older men being skeezy or young women lying about their age. They were happening at the same time. And there wasn't a lot of services for adolescents. And so quickly, 4D had been identified as this like missing piece to the puzzle. And I have found myself in a meeting with all of these adolescent mental health and SUD treatment providers. At the same time, I had made a decision that we would not be able to serve adolescents anymore because we could not mix them with adults, and we didn't have the money to do it. And I think at that time we had like a couple mentors that were paid. And so I had got an opportunity to help start the Oregon Recovery High School Initiative, to start Oregon's first recovery high school. So I'm one of the founding members of that. And so I found myself in this meeting, and I just had to tell these providers, look, we're not serving adolescents anymore, and there's not enough services for them. and hopefully you can get behind this recovery school and maybe it'll be the start, right? And so we discontinued adolescent services, I think about 2017, 18, and just moved to young adult, 18 to 35. And then like Oregon Recovers is, we fast forward a little bit, Oregon Recovers like building momentum and stuff, and I'm building momentum in my own life, and I find another girl, several girls, we get pregnant, me and Megan get pregnant, and then like I'm like working so hard in my professional life, and then me and Megan break up while she's pregnant, we part ways, and then I have another kid, Ava, and so then we're co-parenting, and I'm still building 4D and stuff, and then my first kid, Bella, she inspired me to get clean. Like I had to get clean to fulfill this onus I had put on myself. Like when I was a kid, I was like, I just hated my life, right? Part of it was just bad perception on who I was, like misconception, like where I came from, what my circumstances were reflected who I was and my value. But the other part was just like not enjoying my alcoholic stepdad and the situation I lived in. And so I had made like this choice as a kid. If I ever have a kid, I'm going to be like the best dad. They're never going to know what have gone through. Like I'm going to provide this totally different experience. And I have made this commitment to that. And I also had wished that there was a place for me to go where I could feel like wanted and supported and stuff. So my first kid was very much me trying to become what I had promised I would, right? Or maybe not become what I promised I wouldn't. And then I had to give her away. And I didn't literally, but that's how it felt. I had to give her to somebody else to take care of. I still very much love her and stuff, but I don't get to see her every day. And she's autistic, nonverbal. So we connect and love each other. It's just not in the same way as my other kid. And then Ava was like the thing that like healed my little broken heart. My relationship with her, very close with her. She's 6 now. She's still my little girl, not for long, I can tell. Now it's going away.
They grow quickly.
Yeah.
Mine just turned 32.
You know what I'm talking about.
You know what? Never done a drug, graduated college, and that was my reason for getting sober. That and get off parole. And I just wanted to be a good mom.
Yeah.
And then somewhere it turned for me, but I understand.
Yeah,
she
it's like
never
you
had
gotta
to go
do
through
it.
any bullshit. None.
So yeah, so that's going on, and then I'm like still grinding and building 4D and organizing and stuff, and then a little later on in my career, I get an opportunity to like become a commissioner, which I'm right now. I'm a commissioner of the state's Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission, and
Wow.
and it's a citizen appointed commission, so you got to be appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. And then Oregon has a lot of commissions, like hundreds of them. But anyways, like we like commissions. But anyways, our job is to try to make the substance misuse system better through policy. And so I joined that, and I'm the chair of it now. I was elected as the chair, and I've been the chair for a while. And I've learned a lot about state government through that, and about how to be an advocate, but also a bureaucrat in a way.
It's a fine line.
Yeah, it is a fine line. And then I just got more involved with politics, participating in the political process, and I have friends who are politicians and stuff. And it's just a trip, but my professional life's been great. Like I've just grinded really hard, and I've always put forth helping other people, and that's what I've been focused on. Like, how can I make the best choice that's going to help the most people? And things have come easy. Things have not come so easy in my personal life. Like I have a fiance, and we're getting married August 17th. And that road has been the most difficult. Personal relationship, especially like that intimate relationship, has been the hardest thing for me. And I feel really grateful because I had got asked by this dude, his name is Jared Murray. He's a native cat. And a few years ago, he'd asked me to go to Sweat with him because he had an idea. And so I went to Sweat with him. And then he had asked me if I'd help him start a recovery org for natives similar to 4D. And so I did. I helped him get some money and stuff. And 4D provides like some administrative services to them. But through that relationship, I've really got to deepen my spiritual growth and clean out some of like my biggest skeletons, I think, and paved the way for me to be the man that I want to be in my life. And then also my most recent sponsor, his name's Anthony, call him AJ, but Anthony Jordan. He's like a man that I saw who really had things that I wanted. And he sponsored me for a while. He no longer does because he has a conflict of interest with his job. He works for the government now. And at the time when I asked him, he worked in California, but he moved back here. But anyways, that was the struggle for me. And I feel like I'm getting to a place where I feel confident about myself and who I want to be. And it's ebbed and flowed over my recovery. I've been like, felt really good and then felt really low, felt really good, felt really low. But I feel like I'm getting to a new stage in my life on a personal level where like I'm almost 12 years in, but I feel secure in who I am and I'm able to show up because I know I have the skills and I know they have the integrity to do what's right. Where for a long time it was like, I'm just going to focus on like helping other people and I'm not going to worry about how I feel about myself. Like things have changed for me. And part of that change is because I've been attacked by some people. There's like somebody who relapsed, who was like a friend and worked at an organization I was a part of and who had to get terminated because of their behavior. And then they went out on an all-out defamation campaign on like several of us. And one thing that this person did is they took a photo of me with my shirt off and then created a fake text that was saying that I guess was saying all these lewd things about state representative. And then they tried to get me kicked off of the commission I'm on. And they sent it out to the governor, all the legislators and all this stuff.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and it was like super embarrassing, right? I feel what politicians go through now because they have like slanderous things that happen to them. Like you see the ads and stuff.
I hate the ads.
Yeah, but it's, I went through that and then through that experience, like the person, like I still care for the person and stuff and like I wish the best for them and like I would probably go help them, like reach out and try to go find them and help them because I know they're just like out using, but like my friends and people are like, you shouldn't do that. Yeah, no, he's shaking your head, but it's like, I feel like I should, like whatever, like, I
have some serious rules and boundaries. I really do to get to 27 years sober. And that would have crossed one of them. I commend you for knowing who yourself is because I went for the career for so long because it made me the corporate career and climbing and working 60, 65 hours a week.
Still.
And it's easy to do to keep busy.
Oh, it does. You're right.
It is. Yeah. And when you stop for a second, you're like, holy shit, because I went to IOP at 25 years sober. I was the only sober bitch up in there. When I went for stress from work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I learned so much at 25 years sober that I wish I would have learned at 10 years sober.
Well, you're just trying to make it through the meeting to get to a cigarette.
No, I understand. Like at first it was just to get off parole and I decided to stay. You know?
I feel you. Yeah. So that happened and this person has attacked a lot of people. After a while, people knew the game and knows what's up. But in a way, I'm grateful for it. Not grateful for the situation they're in that happened, but
the growth.
Yeah, it forced me to stop being so fragile and caring what everybody thinks, right?
Oh my God, I love you for saying that because I really cared too much. And I'm just getting to the point where in the podcast, I announced my recovery, which I used to keep the recovery here, the professional
life here.
manager over here. And I didn't want you to know I went to prison because it's almost been 30 years. And what would you think of me? And would you think less? And I'm just now, like when we did the first 2 episodes, we both were like, he's like, how do you feel? And I felt butt ass naked.
Yeah.
Like a stripper on a stripper pole, exposed. My family didn't even know I went to prison, my faraway family. And I let my daughter listen to the story for the first time, the whole story. So I understand what you're saying, but I also think from going through IOP, the worst things that happen to us, if you really think about it and flip them to being the start of the best things that happened
Right.
to us.
Yeah.
I think that going to prison was a bottom. Having a stress breakdown from working too much was a fucking blessing to sit my ass down and to realize you're a miracle. Do you know how many people are successful that come from IV drug use?
A lot.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying what the percentage of
Right.
making it is not good. Especially, I went through child molestation, and my doctor tells me all the time, "Do you know how lucky you are?" And I see people on the street, and I know how lucky I am.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I just like that was like a hard thing this last year. Like it's not being so fragile. And you know, the tricky thing about the ego is like having it be like right sized, right? Because I could oscillate, right, from the biggest piece of shit or to the greatest fucker ever. And it's, I don't want to
You've
be.
done a lot.
I don't want to be either of those,
Right.
man. I used to think I was the greatest fucker ever when I was in treatment. I thought it was like the greatest thing ever. And now it's I know that I'm a good person for the most part, except for last night when I was like upset with my son because he had double earache. That was a very esteemable thing for me, but I'm sure the parents out there will give me some leeway, will give me a pass, right? We all got upset with our kids when they don't sleep. But I know I'm a pretty good person and I know I'm doing the right thing, right? And so that's all I got to really focus on. And then I like to your point about having boundaries, like I don't have to overextend for people, you know. And it's
I do
okay,
know
so
what you
where do
mean.
I put my time and energy, you know, through 4D? Like I also have a training company where I do trainings. You're going to take one next week, and that has been successful. I've trained like 4,000 people.
Did you come up with that position yourself?
What, the training company?
I know that, but were you, and this is one of my most like really questions that I wanted to know.
Oh yeah.
Did you come up with that position of being a certified recovery mentor?
Oh, like the actual, no, that's been around for a while. I just came up with, have my own training that's state approved.
No, yeah, the peer mentors. But
Yeah, I'm just state approved
I
to
thought
be a
you
trainer.
actually might
No.
have. No.
No, that's
Okay.
been around for a long time.
I didn't know that.
No, peers have been around for a long time. It's my mentor, Eric Martin, in Oregon, developed the first peer credential.
Okay.
And then MacBook calls them certified recovery mentors. But I got that, and then got some other cool stuff, like, you know, get out there, like own your own home. I'd encourage people to try to own their own home. My partner is a real estate agent. She's in recovery. She's just a little heroin and dope fiend too. And then she had got married. I don't want to put too much of her stuff out there, but she had got married and then was like going to be like a stay-at-home mom or whatever. And then had found out there was infidelity and then had a divorce. And she left with one house and like $500 and never been to college. And then she went and got a real estate license. And then she like purchased some homes and has rental units. Like she did it all. She's super great. I'm really lucky to have her.
I love it.
Yeah, and like she did it. It's like you could do whatever. Like
I love women stuff like
yeah,
that. I
she's
really
great,
do.
man. She's really sharp. She works a lot smarter than me. I seem to work a lot harder in the nonprofit realm, but we have a kid, and then we're trying to have another kid. I got my little son right now, Ashton, and you know, so now, you know, where I'm at, I'm just like, I've surrounded myself. The other thing I think I've done well is that I got over having to know everything kind of early on. This one time, like, I thought I knew all this shit, right? And I had wrote a grant for 4D when it was just tiny, right? And I sent it to my mentor, Eric, who was like volunteer clinical supervisor at 4D. And then I asked, hey, can you make some edits on this? And then he's sure. And as a week went by, and he sent it to me, like the edits, right? And I opened it, and it was brand new. It was a whole new grant. It didn't have anything I wrote in it.
Look at that. Sounds like my boss.
And I was like shattered. But in that moment, I just was like, okay, like my feelings are hurt, whatever. Like, whatever. I was like, okay, this person spent all this time writing this. They seem to want 4D to be successful. So I just read it. And then figured out where they got the information from. And then it was like, okay, I need to surround myself with people like this. And so I've went and found people who are really successful or people who have come to 4D who've wanted support and that I've listened to. And that's how I've gotten.
Honestly,
That's how I've gotten like so far,
This was my lecture to
you know.
except for my sponsee trying to help them. I only sat around myself with, at first it was easy because it was a gay men's meeting,
Right.
right? They didn't want to sleep with me coming out of prison for the escort service, but I really gravitated to the long-term sobriety. And if you have 20 years, what did you do to make it work?
Right.
And that's, for me, still my foundation, except for they now have 41 years and they're older than bejesus. And
Yeah.
no,
And they're like dying out.
they are. My
people
first
I look up
sponsor
to,
died.
yeah.
At 23 years of being my sponsor, he died. And I was like overwhelmed. But I do agree with you. Surround yourself with people you admire and you inspire to be like.
And to your weaknesses too.
Yeah.
I'm not a very outgoing person in speaking. If I had to do this with you right here now, it probably wouldn't happen. That's why I found someone who can.
And I can't set up the mics.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Peter did the website. And
Nah,
this was
yeah.
all from a Father's Day party at his house, right? The first time I ever, in my entire life, my dad died when I was 15. And my sponsor that I have now is like my dad. Okay. He's a gay man, but we're so much alike. You'd think I was birthed to him.
Yeah.
And so we celebrated Father's Day at Peter's house. And Peter's dad had just died. And literally, this podcast came from that party.
It's awesome.
It's crazy.
We had just actually, it's coming out this Friday, talked to Chris G, who's at True Colors. And I understand you were part of that.
Starting True Colors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to speak to a little bit
Well,
to
in your oral presentation, I was like,
Oh, in the bathroom? They filmed it?
I,
Yeah.
s-
and
I
they-
saw
yeah.
the bathrooms and I was like, that's True Colors. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
Oh, guys, I'll give you some stuff about 4D and where we're at. So 4D started out as a recovery community organization, a peer-run organization. And so that basically means it's an organization ran by 51% or more people in recovery, the board all the way down. We have recovery centers. That's been our stick for a long time. And that's where like people can go to meetings, have events, get a mentor, whatever. The difference between what 4D was and what people think of as treatment is that, and I say was because we're launching treatment services now, but basically in treatment, you have to get a diagnosis by a clinician and then they prescribe you a level of care. Just like if you broke your arm and you went and saw a doctor, they would get an x-ray and then be like, okay, you got to wear this kind of cast. It's going to take this long. Here's what your rehabilitation is going to look like. It's the same thing when you go to addiction treatment, which is great. It's a great thing.
I've been a few times.
Yeah. What 4D was is the person, they diagnose themselves and then they go to the center. They get a peer mentor and work on their goals. Similar to like AA and stuff.
Okay.
So it's like somewhere between Alcoholics Anonymous and clinical services, right?
Right.
It's somewhere in between there, right?
that.
But we've never been like, oh, like somebody's got to work the steps or whatever. And so we had a recovery center, peer services, big ass parties and stuff I used to throw at the center. And then during COVID, more money came in. We got opportunity to expand. And so we doubled our recovery center, got another one going, started doing peer outreach.
What's the other one?
There's one in Hillsborough. That was our second one, the O'Rourke Center. And
What's it called?
The O'Rourke Center. And then we got one in Clackamas, one in Gresham, and then we have an adolescent one, adolescent and family. So then I got a recovery house, and then we started doing like street outreach. We did all the advocacy, education stuff, a part of Oregon Recovers, but also independently. And then we helped Painted Horse Recovery get going. And then we had a recovery center on MLK that was like one of our first ones. And it turned into the Queer Center, the LGBTQ plus 2S plus. It turned into the Queer Center naturally, basically, over time, just because I think that area. And then I had always been criticized by somebody for something, but that we weren't inclusive enough of that community. Or a lot of different communities were coming there. So we try to have like ladies' nights on Thursdays, keep the VOA men out. Like we try to do what we could to make everybody happy, but
They're closed.
I
yeah,
know.
no.
Anyways, also helped this other organization called Northwest Instituto Latino Adicciones start up. They're like a 4D for the Latino, Latinx community, Spanish speaking. And then I knew there was like a lot of LGBTQs in recovery in the Portland area. There's just a lot of LGBTQs, right? And so I was like waiting for either somebody to ask me or to find a leader to do it. And then this woman, Amanda, I met, who's the executive director now, she was working at 4D and she was just like super good at everything. She's fucking sharp. She's awesome. Got a great attitude, great temperament as a leader, can really hold a lot of space for a lot of different demands, but also be fair and objective, which I think is important for a leader to be. And then in my experience, I don't want to talk on behalf of the LGBTQ community, but there's a lot of different communities and a lot of different...
What's the first time I met you?
Individuals, right, with a lot of different needs and wants for their unique circumstances. And so she has a really good job being able to hold all that. And so I have been like, hey, look, there is no recovery org for your community, right? There's some like healthcare services that are specific and then some kind of harm reduction public health stuff, but not a recovery org, right? And then I was like, is that something you'd want to do? And she was like, yeah. And then Care Oregon, they manage the behavioral health benefit for Health Share of Oregon, which is a CCO, which manages Medicaid benefit for a certain region in Oregon. Anyways, they manage OHP. They came to me and asked me if I knew of a recovery center that needed money. And I said, well, you know what we don't have is LGBTQ recovery organization that's dedicated to that community to do what they need. And we should in Portland. It would make sense. Like if there was anywhere, this should be like a spot. And they were like, okay, we'll do it. Let us know how much money you need. And so it was like, we need $700,000 a year to get us rolling. And then we just turned the MLK Center to True Colors, which was great because it was already turning into that. But also people got mad at me for it. So,
well, you can't please everyone, right? All the time.
I don't know what you guys want, man. I'm trying my best, dude, to help everybody, man. I don't know.
What I really like about that center, so I went there the night you were there and you introduced Amanda. And it was that night. I'm sitting in the audience. I only went for the ice cream. 50 Licks was there.
Oh, okay.
I'm not joking. I got chocolate as fuck, and it was chocolate as fuck. And I went with a whole bunch of guys from Lunch Bunch. And you introduced Amanda, and you said something about her being in prison, and I was like, I was like, I should be this, right? And that's when my brain started going. It wasn't until you introduced Amanda, and I was like, she's got a prison record, I got a prison record, and I have a degree. So yeah.
She's great, and super blowing me up.
Kudos to you.
Yeah.
For bringing that, okay?
Sure.
Out of being downgraded on it. What a big thing.
People always talk, but it's like it started with the Miracles, for example. I went to Miracles a lot in their African American community center in my early recovery and studied the principles of Narcotics Anonymous there and met people who had really strong spiritual foundation and temperament. And then Miracles had like given me their first contract so I could review it, so I could write up my own scope of work for our first contract with the county. And so I was just doing what had been given to me, and now they're doing great. And then we're gonna help another org called the Gorge Recovery Center in the Dalles in Oregon. We're gonna fiscally support them. So basically, like what we've done is we've been able to take our administrative infrastructure for managing grants, and then provide that to these newer orgs who want to start up, so that they have an easier time focusing on delivering the services. And then as they grow, they can break off when they want, or maybe they don't want to.
True Colors says their parent company.
Yeah.
But that's how they look at it in a good way.
Yeah. We just count the beans and stuff. And
they
make sure they're in compliance, and then they just run the programs.
And then Amanda, but a lot of credit.
Yeah.
It's like what we were getting to, where you hire to your strengths or your weaknesses. You hire to your weaknesses.
Yeah.
And so people who are out trying to make the changes, they don't have that necessarily, that financial.
It's a grind. I managed all of it. I was HR, finance, everything for a long time. Wrote all the grants. I still write some grants, but we're getting bigger now. We're like, I think collectively we'll be like 20 million this year in revenue. And then I secured a bunch of money to open up treatment services for adolescents. We're going to open up residential and outpatient for adolescents. And then I'm working in the legislature to make changes to the state's framework in which they regulate and pay for adolescent services, like 97% of adolescents in America who have an SUD do not get treatment. And part of it's payment, part of it's regulation, part of it, people don't want to do the work. It's really hard. And then we're going to open up young adult, outpatient, in housing. And then we'll be opening up like a 44-unit apartment complex. It's a new construction. I'm about to sign a lease on it here soon. And so we have a lot of really cool stuff going on. I just have a really good team around me. Like my team, my executive team's awesome. All of them. McCrae, she's got a great story. She's our financial director. She's awesome. Cody's our recovery director. He's great. Nick's super smart. We just hired him. He's in recovery, been to prison. He's got 2 PhDs in every fucking letter you could have behind your name.
I love that.
Yeah, but he said he did that because he went to prison. He didn't think he was going to get his record expunged. And so he went and got every letter you could to try to balance the scales. But he's just super down to earth and cool. I got my development department. I just have like really good staff at 4D. We're great. We work together well. And then in the community, we just have a lot of support. And so it's been great.
What I love is, and we found this through a lot of the people we've talked to and hope to talk to, and why we have this, part of why we have the show is to show people that, like what Easy does, where he hires people from out of the recovery centers to work for him, taking that chance and showing people that, removing the stigma and showing people that either are in the struggling or in recovery, that you can go beyond, you can be something.
Of course, yeah, there's a lot of...
Not that you aren't already, but there's hope. Give people that, something to look up to, right?
Yeah, I'd say that I always just challenge people to dream and then chase it. You know, you're not going to accomplish everything if you sit on your ass. I feel like I've worked hard.
It's a program of action.
I worked hard. Hustle, grind.
This.
Yeah,
yes,
it's like...
I love it.
And not everybody's got to work 60 hours a week, but I'd say you have an opportunity in life to have meaning and purpose and fulfillment. And whatever that is, go after it.
Well, when it becomes a passion, necessarily work, it's just what you do.
Right.
Yeah. I find I put a lot of hours into this show, and, you know, it's because I love it.
And I tell Peter, like, when we're doing this, I don't stress it all. I'm like totally chill and in a business meeting, and I'm worried about attrition and finances and whatever. My brain hurts, but this, it's good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to have to get somebody who's controversial to drive your streams up. You have to get Donald Trump or something.
No, I don't think we want to go there.
It's not funny because I have a red shirt and I like bucket hats. Like and I have a GTD bucket hat.
Oh, gosh.
And I wore one to the lunch bunch. And someone said, "Do you know red stands for Republican?"
Oh, gosh.
And I was like, I just look good in red, and it matches my.
I love red,
hat.
and I'm taking it back.
Okay, that's good,
and
man.
I get in the car, and I'm like, Peter, why were they bashing on my red? You know?
Oh, you're in Portland.
No, but I didn't like. I vote, but I watch ESPN. I don't like to watch the news.
Yeah, no.
So I was all upset. I was like, my bucket hat's cute.
Look, I was on Dr. Phil. That was a trip.
Was he a trip?
He was a trip, but...
He's a trip on TV, too.
He is a trip, but I had argued with him a little bit, and they did not include that. I feel like I won the argument, but...
That's why they didn't include it.
Probably, but it was about Measure 110, which is like... I was a big critic of Measure 110. I do not personally believe that decriminalization is like the best public policy. I think there's multiple interventions you can have in somebody's life to help them. I'm not saying people should go to prison over a crack pipe. Of course that's not right. But I also don't think we should just sit by idly and watch people addicted to drugs waste their entire life away.
Right. The timeout for me going to prison was exactly what this bitch needed.
I know. Okay, people don't want to hear that.
No, it is. And treatment 27 years ago was not as available.
Yeah.
I'm lucky I had this lady that told me, I can tell you really want to be sober, but you need to go to a meeting and stay there probably for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you need to live in a meeting. But I think now it's like a good time somewhat to be in recovery. There's a lot of different options and stuff. I think Oregon was figuring out how to It's tuning its machine.
It's maneuvering.
Yeah, between public safety and public health. Okay, like, why can't you go to an emergency room and get immediately inducted on medication-assisted treatment? That doesn't make sense to me. We should be holding hospitals accountable more and stuff instead of just either wanting the cops to do it all or blaming them for not doing enough or blaming them for doing too much. I feel like the cops get overburdened on shit, and it's okay, then why don't we have the healthcare people out in the streets getting people healthy, right? Like, that's my opinion. But I got Dr. Phil, and then I got to be a key witness in the Senate Finance Committee in the federal government like 2 weeks ago. And so that was like 2.5 hours of questions. I got to prepare remarks and prepare written testimony. And a lot of people helped me. A lot of people edited my written testimony or looked over it, and I appreciate those people doing that. But that was like a big thing. Senator Wyden had invited me down because they're looking to make changes to Medicaid. I mean, one of the big things they want is to put MOUD, medication for opioid use disorder, in jail. And I think that's great. I think people should get treatment when they go to jail. If somebody has to go to prison, they should be getting rehabilitated right away. Not waiting, like right now, at least in Oregon, from my understanding, is they wait until they're about to get out, or they have.
See, I think that's where they say they're taking a group to the boot camp, right? I was the second group to go to the boot camp, and I had treatment in prison. I got
right away?
High. Yeah. I got high one time when I got out, and I went and told the parole officer, and I said, put me in jail. I don't want to be high. And she was like, no, you've been really successful.
Yes.
2 weeks at the restitution center and back to treatment. But that's where I got my first AA meeting.
That's good.
That's where, I got the Alcohol and Drug Recovery Award, which made me feel like I could do it. And we did work. I got a work ethic there. I had to chop down trees, not get your nails done. Like, it was some shit.
Yeah. No, I think, we need to have more options available. That's what I've been working on, and I'm committed to 5 more years at 4D this last year.
Can we interview you again in 5 years?
Oh yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Like,
the other
seriously,
option, I'm like, man, if I could just run a private business, right? Like, I have this guy that I really look up to, and he's in recovery, and he owns like a ton of commercial properties, and it's not even that he has all this money. Money's important, but it's what he can do with his funds. He supports these organizations. He gives people jobs. I'm always watching him, and he's a really humble dude. He's the richest person I fucking know. He's got a lot of fucking money. You would never know it because he wears the same fucking beat up shoes every day. But maybe that's how you know. You know what I mean? But I just watch the way like that he helps people and the way he uses money to help people. And
I love that.
Is that what I want to do? Because the nonprofit is great. Like, I'm really committed to this work, but I don't own 40. People think I own it. I don't own it. It's a nonprofit, right? Which is great because it gives the community. But I want to be able to give something to my kids, and then when I get older, I want to be able to maybe create a foundation or I don't know, something.
You'll get there.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, but I'm committed to this for a while, especially with the adolescent services. That's the thing I'm most focused on right now in the legislature and through any influence I have in any sort of policy is
why?
Well, because there's nothing for kids. There's 40,000 adolescents in Oregon who have a substance use disorder and like 40 residential treatment beds. And that's not to say every kid needs to go to residential treatment, but it's just a good comparison.
No,
right?
I want our people to know why.
It's not fair. My own kids are getting older, and it's like we should be investing in our kids. Like, we should be helping our kids when they get addicted, and we're not, and we don't do a good job. And so that's what I'm committed to, and that's what I feel passionate about. And it also seems very challenging, which is good. Like, I like to be challenged and I like to learn. So I'm like I'll constantly try to be uncomfortable, not know the answers, find people who do have the answers to your point earlier. Like, find the people who compliment you and who bring something to the table. You don't have to be everything to everyone all the time.
Exactly.
You don't have to be everything all the time. That's like impossible.
Can't make everyone happy either.
Oh no, I've tried really hard.
So have I.
I got really tired.
Yeah.
And resentful.
We're winding down here, and I really appreciate you being available for us and being vulnerable with your whole story.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came that this podcast came to fruition from was me trying to figure out my second act, if you will. And I wanted to leave a legacy or have some kind of impact.
Sure.
Coming from the corporate world where it's just dollars and stuff, do something that I felt passionate about. And you are you're that inspiration for those of us because you've done it. You've got this legacy. And no matter where you go, your future looks bright to me in talking to you today. And so I really appreciate you being here and sharing and showing others that you can come out of the depths of darkness and there is a light that you can find and live in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been dark in my recovery before. One thing, it's easy when you're like 2-3 years in, when you're able to be like, well, that was me and my addiction. It's a little different 7-8 years in when you're like, I did that sober. So just
try 25 and go in the IOP.
I'm just saying, you still make mistakes. Like, I got a lot of accolades for the work that I've done, but I've made a lot of mistakes. My intimate relationships, like intimate sexual kind of relationships, that's been like one of the hardest things for me that has just really torn me apart in a lot of different ways for whatever reason, whether I'm just selfish or trauma from my past. I don't know, whatever the cause is, I'm not so much focused on that. Like, I just more focused on what do I need to do different to feel better and to treat people good. Right. And so that's what I'm working on, but I'm getting married. And I'd just like to thank Jared, my native cat, and then Anthony Jordan, my sponsor, for helping me get to a point where I could get married. Feel good about it.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Very excited. No more. So I have 3 kids, 3 babies moms. My dad, I think, has 8 kids and 5 or 6 babies moms, so I'm doing better than my dad. So I'm happy about that.
One.
Shout out to Rachel. We get married in August.
Shout out to Rachel.
Shout out to
an
Rachel.
Independent businesswoman.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. To my executive director, Rachel.
Thank you for giving us your time. I know you're busy. We can tell from everything you said. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Look forward to the next 5 years, both personally and in your work here in the nonprofit.
Yeah, sure. Hit me up anytime. Happy to help promote what you guys got going on, or if you just want to meet to talk about how to take it to the next level or whatever, and you think I could be helpful, just let me know.
That's
appreciate
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Peter with Real Recovery Podcast.
This is Julie. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks to each and every one of you for lending us your ears and hearts. Your engagement is what fuels our passion and keeps this podcast thriving.
We cherish the moments we share here and hope they resonate with you, whether you're on a daily commute, at the gym, or just taking a moment for yourself.
Make sure to head over to our website at realrecoverypodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter for the latest insights and uplifting stories from our community delivered straight to your inbox.
Click that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player too, so you can keep up with every new episode. It's your support that keeps our conversation alive and meaningful.
And if our stories have touched you, consider using the donate button on our site. Your contributions, no matter the size, are deeply appreciated. They help us continue our mission of sharing hope and healing.
Join us beyond the podcast and follow our journey on social media. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. All the links are on our site, so you can stay connected and be a part of the Real Recovery community every day.
Your likes, shares, and comments not only spread the message of recovery, but also remind us that we're all in this together.
So, until we meet again, remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination, and we'll be here to accompany you every step of the way to recovery, real recovery.
Thanks for listening.